You may think it's all new, you may think that's all old, but it's not that different. It's just built at a different time and a little bit different way. And so I think that's the story we have to tell.
So John, in this episode, we got a couple of things happening. We've got a great interview. We're going to give away another t-shirt, and we've got a new segment on the podcast.
Stick around to the end of the podcast so you don't miss a beat.
You're listening to the Get Out and Drive podcast with John, Custom Car Nerd Meyer, and Jason, Old Car Guy Carr. We'll be bringing you gearheads everything you never wanted to know about cars and why they should be on the road and not in your garage. Are you ready to get out and drive?
Folks, welcome back to another great episode of the Get Out and Drive podcast. My name is Jason, Old Car Guy Carr.
I am John, Custom Car Nerd Meyer.
I can remember back in the late 80s, early 90s, opening up my first issue of Car and Driver magazine and being able to flip through all them glossy pictures and seeing all the cars that were coming new, read all the stories, the editorials. And one of the benefits that we have today with the digital age is that we could still do that, only it's on our screen. And we've got Bob and Matt with us today from Overdrive Magazine. Welcome, guys, to the podcast.
Thank you for having us.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Well, we went and checked out your magazine, and it's kind of like right down the middle of what people would expect, because I guess a lot of people now with technology, they're very much used to just looking at a page and it's just text and everything. Some people are really interested in the look and feel of a magazine. Is that what happens on your website? Kind of explain to us how you got to that.
Yeah, we kicked around the idea of of an actual print magazine, and we decided that at this point, early. I mean, we're still very new. That wasn't something that we wanted to go with, but we wanted it to have that look and feel of an actual print magazine. It's something that we've all grown up with. We've all been around for all those years, and I think we've come across what we've come up with, I should say, is something I think that really works well. It does look great, and we're really happy with this first issue. The first, we published our first articles in October, just on our website. We published additional articles in November, and then we basically took December off to really let Alex put the magazine together, and launched basically just 2 weeks ago with the actual Flipbook magazine. And so far we've had some nice success with it. So I'm really thrilled that this is Bob's baby here. This is Bob's project, and I'm glad that we can get this off the ground and really turn this into something that we're really happy with, and hopefully others will be too.
When Matt and I and Alex got together, we had a picture of what we wanted to do, but we didn't have a picture of really at that point how we wanted to do it. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that we were debated with was whether we just wanted to have a website, or whether we wanted to have a website and an active magazine, as you guys have seen. And so we kind of took it by steps. We started out in July, and from July through our first issue, which came out in late October, we created the material. We had to have a lot of content, and we worked very hard to get that. And once we felt we had enough content, then Alex, who was our actually magazine creator, and she's awesome, sat down and started to create the magazine as if you would see it. Obviously, we have a website, and you can go there anytime, and you can see all the material there without the magazine. You can go and march through the whole website and see the content. But the intent was to do exactly what you said, John, was to try to make it vibrant, make it something that the average person that goes to a car enthusiast website sees pictures and text. And if it kind of stumbles along or flows along, depending on the how good the people are putting it together, it doesn't have character. Matt and I sat down and said, look, we're going to base the magazine on all the facts that we put on the website. I mean, we have a huge library there already, and we've only been started for a few months. And we have these things called fact sheets, which is a sheet on every single car that we talk about with as much data as we can put together about that car. So, but that's nice, but that isn't vibrant. So Matt and I sat down, we have to, how do we do it? What do we do? I mean, we're not going to bore you with the entire process, but it took us a month to really be comfortable with the idea of doing that. And we even debated whether it should be a flip book, as you see, where you can turn the pages, or it should just be images. And so we decided to make it a flip book because it's, again, active. You know, it may be a little cute and it may be a little glitzy, but it's active and the person has to be involved in looking at it,
Right.
just like they would be involved at home. So that was why we went in that direction.
And at first glance, like as I'm going through the website and looking at the different articles, and I mean, the most recent one is jam-packed full of interesting articles, Hudson Hornets, Buick Grand Nationals, like anything that you guys ever wanted to, dive into is there. Bob, I guess my question is directed to you, seeing how this is your baby. What prompted you to want to go the magazine or the online magazine route, knowing the competition that's out there? What is going to set Overdrive Magazine apart from everybody else?
Well, that's a good question, and hopefully I'll have a good answer. I think the thing that we're different about is exactly what you just talked about. You can see online magazines. Some of them are even flip books. I mean, we're not unique in that regard. But the difference is it's a magazine, and then it's kind of like the way you used to, like you were talking about Car and Driver. You read the magazine, and then you kind of put it on the side, and you may go back to it once or twice. Something jogs your memory. But what we're trying to do is we have the magazine, and the magazine is announcing all the material that we have. The intent is to really weld an encyclopedia of car information to an organ that's a magazine that goes out to people. We felt you can't have one without the other. If you have a library of material, it's kind of boring. People have to try to pick through it. They don't, somebody might get really excited about it and spend all day there. That's possible. But what we were trying to do is get people excited. We're going to do an article pretty soon, which I'm not going to tell you the whole story of, but it's going to be something that most people don't even know, but it's exciting. And when we give it to you, you're going to say, I don't want to use this bad word, crap. Where did that come from? But it's not going to be something that's going to be absurd. It's going to be something that most people don't know. And not only that, we try to do something else that I think you might have noticed. We're trying to combine newer vehicles with older vehicles of the same make and kind of try them together. What's the same about them? I don't want to go on too long here, but we did the Buick GN and GNX article, but we tied it back to the 1970 GSX and trying to tell people, the more it changes, the more it's the same. The overriding thing in those two cars is Buick was interested in promoting performance. Mm-hmm. And it didn't, they were waiting for a chance to have enough computer management to be able to take that V6 and get it make V8 type of horsepower. And that's some things people don't recognize. They think the car kind of shows up, and it shows up because some guy in marketing decided on it. Well, that happens too. But,
right.
but I mean, I think what we're trying to do is tell the story, not the real detail behind it, but the story of the thinking. Why did they do this, and what was important about it, and where did they take the example from? Right. Buick has been involved in performance since the 30s. I mean, we wrote there's a sidebar article there about the older performance engines and where the name Century came from.
That has to do with the age of the people that owns them.
Well, yeah, true. But what it really stands for is because the Buick Century was the first production car that was guaranteed to hit 100 miles an hour.
Wow.
That's why it's called the Century. And it came out in 1936, and the trick was a hot rodder trick. We take the littlest body we have, and we stick the biggest engine we have inside the body. They put the Roadmaster engine in what was called Series 60, which was a special, and they made a hot rod.
Right.
And so that's the kind of stories we want to tell people, that don't think because you're sitting in the present age or you're locked into the muscle car era. Oh, please stop it already. That you can't find interest in other times and places and other vehicles.
Well, I don't mind you comparing the new cars to the old cars. Do not crash a 2009 Impala into a 59 Impala.
No, I know. The 59 will survive, but the driver will end up through the windshield. But other than that,
that was some scary video to watch.
Yes, wasn't that? Gee.
Yeah, it was absolutely ridiculously scary. But
well, they weren't thinking about those things back in the day. I mean, we all know that. Those of us that are sitting around this table know that the whole difference was the car was transportation, and what they wanted to do was make it exciting. And they weren't thinking about all these other things that we think about now.
No, that's the fact that the steering column is no longer a spear.
Right. That's
a big change.
Exactly.
As much as I'm not a fan of Ralph Nader, he made cars safer. So
right. There was a lot of people that recognized safety. I mean, Ford found out something in 1956. Ford came out with a padded dash and seat belts and a reset steering wheel, and nobody bought the cars. So they said, well, I don't need that. Seatbelt. Who wore a seatbelt in 1956?
Well, who wore a seatbelt with disc brakes and padded dash and collapsible steering column when the Tucker came out?
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
I mean, that's why everybody was scared of that car.
Oh, we were Matt and I were talking about that this week.
Yeah.
About the impact of that on the big three.
Oh yeah. Yeah, fuel injection, disc brakes, seat belts, padded dash, collapsible steering column. There was a bunch of things that vehicle had that everybody was afraid of. Everybody meaning the big three.
Right.
They would have had to adjust their entire manufacturing process. They weren't willing to do it.
Right, just eliminate the problem.
Yeah, and they did.
It's like if you see a cockroach running across the floor. That's how they were looking at it.
Matt, well, let's hear from you about your input on the magazine and how you got it to actually be a real thing.
This started about July of last year, and Bob and I had been connected on LinkedIn for several years actually, and had communicated a bit back and forth, but we had never actually met. And out of the blue, one day he posed a question on LinkedIn asking if anybody would be interested in possibly talking about developing a magazine. And I was looking for a passion project, something to occupy the weekends and evenings. And my background's marketing and graphic design and illustration. This could be interesting. So I reached out to Bob, and they said late July, early August. By October, we had a website up and a magazine in development. I was most intrigued. The reason I jumped on board to get involved with Bob was the amount of information he has, the archives that he has at his fingertips, things that he's collected over the years, and just the wealth of knowledge in this guy's head is, to me, staggering. I mean, like he's forgotten more than I'll ever know, which is great. But I get to wear my marketing hat on something fun, and instead of trying to make bearings in my day job, I try to make bearings look sexy. I get to talk about cars and have some fun with that. So that's how we got connected and worked our way through this. So
I want to say that Matt and I, we think very much alike. So it's really kind of easy to do what we're doing. We don't have a lot of, obviously there'll be things we might disagree on, but for the most part, we both have the same vision and we both have the same process in mind, which is very important. So when we come up with an idea, and the Buick GN idea was his idea, I want to say. We just batted around. How would we present it? What's significant? What's important? And it was very easy to coalesce the material on that because we weren't kind of I wonder what we should do. No, we had a very clear picture and off we went, which is really nice.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the marketing guy in me, which is what I do, we wanted to put together a calendar that, we have a general idea. We don't have it, totally detailed out, 6 months to a year out, but we have a general idea for the next several months what we're going to be putting in each issue. And every once in a while, something else pops up, and we're going to say, hey, let's throw this in on this month or what have you. I mentioned the Grand National. I had a Grand National, and I bought one in '87. There's probably not a day that goes by that I don't miss that car. So, so I absolutely, wanted to do something about that. But, with Bob, it's been very easy. Like you said, we think much alike. We're looking at this as a legitimate business. This isn't just a hobby. This isn't just a side hustle for us or for me. And this is something that we both, all three of us, Alex, who he mentioned, is my daughter. She's a professional designer and specializes in editorial design. She's designed several magazines, worked for several magazines, and that's her forte. So, so we've recruited her to be part of our team. We're looking at this as something that's, it has legs. Or I should say has wheels. It'd be more appropriate. We want this to go somewhere, and we have a plan that we think is going to help get it there. So.
If you didn't hear, two of our favorite partners have joined forces. Racing Junk Classifieds is now the official marketplace of Drag and Drive Addiction.
Mike Narks is a great friend of the Get Out and Drive podcast. We're excited to have him join us as a Racing Junk partner. Be sure to visit our site, getoutanddrive.com, for a link to Drag and Drive Addiction.
DragandDrive.com is the best source for news and entertainment from the Drag and Drive community, showcasing vehicle builds, racer spotlights, event updates, and more. Plus, they are the only site to find historical data for all Drag and Drive events since the beginning. Drag and Drive hosts events that are considered the modern day two-lane blacktop.
Racers drive their cars from track to track over several days, carrying only the items they need to race or repair their vehicle. The events use a racer's average ET for their winner selection, taking that time to sort the racers into top racer lists, like the top 100 racers of a designated year. Drag and Drive provides historical updates for standalone events. And I don't mean to brag, but I did get to ride in the Narcs cart. And that is Jason's favorite Panther platform.
Yeah, and one of the big things we talk about, Matt and I talk about all the time, is trying to make this magazine relevant to younger people.
Yeah.
We're all sitting in this room, we're on this Zoom call, and none of us is 18, let's face it. And so what we've been trying to do is say, let's take a vehicle that young people might be interested in, and let's see what we can make exciting about it and how we can relate it back to the vehicles that people like us would recognize. So one of our Datsun story was a very neat story. I don't know if you know the background, but I have a friend who owned a Datsun 240Z back in the day. And he and his daughter were incredibly excited about the new Datsun Z. So he was talking about it at a party that we had. And I said, look, what I want you to do, you don't have to write the story, but you got to talk to me about it. You got to tell me everything that happened, and I'll turn it into a story. And I thought that was really interesting how he went through the process of looking at the car, sitting in both cars, remembering how one thing was and everything else. And I think that's the kind of thing we'd like to do. We'd like to do more of that, because I think there's plenty of young people out there that really enjoy cars, but we have to get them interested in what we're saying. So that's one of our missions that we're really thinking about very hard.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, Bob, because my next question was going to be about bringing some of the information that we all know about cars, whether it has to do with a physical car, whether it has to do with, Matt's side of thing with marketing, the cars in the magazine, or the writing of the stories. If we don't get those stories out there, they're going to be lost. We talk about it all the time with our kind of our mantra with Get Out and Drive podcast is what drives youth, and how are we going to get the youth involved? And I think you're trying to target that area. And youths today aren't going out and they're not buying newspapers, they're not buying magazines, they're not buying a lot of things that we did when we were that age to get the information that we wanted to learn. We absorb a lot. We're like sponges when we're young. We've got to try and tap into that. And I think my question was going to be, how are you going to do that? But you kind of already answered it by saying, we want to try and make this magazine approachable or tangible, so to speak, for the youth, so that they can go in and they can read these articles, that they're going to get intrigued, they're going to learn some information, they're going to want more. How do you propose to, and maybe this is a question for Matt specifically, how do you propose to market that, say, I don't know, 14 to 24 age range to find this magazine and click on it and open those pages and hear that swiping and get the information that as a teenager, I just couldn't get enough of when I went to that magazine rack.
Exactly. I've been doing a lot of research online on social media, just trying to see who's in all of the different automotive clubs on Facebook and on LinkedIn, and seeing who's interested, who's looking at our product, and trying to get a gauge of what that age range could be. And it's across the board. It really is. I was actually surprised at how many of those younger people that the 21, the 20 somethings are in there. And a lot of it has to do with their parents are my age, and they had that car, they had that dream car, they passed it on to their kid, or they passed on just the love of the Grand National that my daughter grew up around, or my 76 Camaro, or what have you. I mean, it's there's a familiarity with a lot of this, I think, that comes to it. And I find people all the time who are young people who want one of those older cars. They're not all electrical engineers, so they're not going to be able to work on these new cars as when they discover, and I think that's with most of us, when they discover that, hey, these things really aren't that difficult to work on. They may be a pain in the ass at times, but they're not that difficult to work on. This is fun, and it's something that they can learn from. Telling some of these stories and talking about some of these vehicles from our past and beyond. Those stories are going to be lost if they're not told, and they have to be told. And that's something that, I love history. I love the automotive history. Like I said, I've learned so much from Bob. I have an older brother who retired from GM. He's got tons of stories. I grew up around this, and, was always fascinated by what went into creating these vehicles and making them something that they are. And looking now today, you look at something from 1973 and go, wow, it's amazing that some of these things were able to hit the road, and others, they're still around today, which I think is fantastic. So,
I have two sons. One son is completely interested in Japanese cars because he's lived in California for about 15 years, and that's out there. That's all the story. Well, I decided that I'm 79 years old and I'm not going to keep my cars around anymore. So I gave my 70 W30 to him. Okay. Now you have to understand something. This is a kid who, when he opens up the hood, all he sees is wires and he has no understanding. Well, he called me up this weekend to proudly tell me he did a tune-up on the car. Wow. And he went and learned how to do it. Well, my other son, who was a few years older, back when he was in high school, he bought a 1972 Cutlass Supreme, and he turned it into the equivalent to a Hurst Olds. He put a Ram Air hood on it. It had a 455 in it. He souped it up. It's a beauty. He still has it today. And this is 30 years ago, and he's always been a car guy. But the difference between those two kids, and they're only a few years apart, led me to believe that they're into cars. They just don't understand the relationship of American cars because they've been cut out of that. They've been by the manufacturers, and, Toyota and the Japanese people have made them think that American cars are junk and American cars are not exciting. American cars aren't fun. Go back to my youngest son. He drove the car for the first time and he said, "Oh my God, this scared the you-know-what out of me." And he said he nailed it in. He has a circular driveway and he was turning out onto the street. And he said, lucky nobody was coming because I left about 100 feet of S-shaped rubber on the street. Oh, yeah. And but I think what was interesting is that he didn't have any interest in it until he was exposed to it.
Mhm.
And I think that's one of the things we have to do. I'm sure you guys have been to car shows, and whenever I was at a car show, I opened the doors on my car and opened the hood, and I wasn't, don't touch this car. I was, let kids sit in it, tell them little stories about them, let them feel it, let them understand it. 9 times out of 10, they'd ask me to start it up. They want to hear it. And I think we need to do more of that. And maybe with the magazine, we're going to try to figure out ways to do that. I can't obviously market specifically, but we are going to find places where those younger people are. And there's plenty of young people that are into cars. And we're going to try to give them the juxtaposition, as we said, with that 240 versus the new Z. We're going to tell them, you may think it's all new, you may think that's all old, but it's not that different. It's just built at a different time and a little bit different way. And so I think that's the story we have to tell. It's still exciting. Old cars are exciting and new cars are exciting. And I've now run down. Blah, 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 blah.
It's time for a new segment called Trade Schooled. Through our What Drives Youth initiative and our partnership with the RPM Foundation, we strive to put the emphasis on the value of attending an automotive trade school and passing down the information to the next generation of gearheads.
So we'll be sharing some bits of knowledge, fun facts, just things we wish we would have known, or stuff that can help someone just starting out in the automotive industry and hobby. We'll be highlighting automotive trade schools, classes, and other learning opportunities that can be taken advantage of.
This week on Trade School, John, who says he's a VW air-cooled nerd, learns something new about VWs. John, what did you learn?
I learned, and I thought I knew everything about Volkswagens. I learned that split-screen buses were built all the way till 1975. 1975. I thought everything stopped. Split screen buses stopped in 1967 and went all the way up to 1975 as non-U.S. imports. I was looking at what someone told me was a 1975 split screen VW bus. I did not know that it was Brazilian built and not for U.S. import. But I have memorized only Mexican built and German built vehicles that were U.S. imports. And it was kind of crazy. I also learned, I thought that all bay window buses were made from 1968, which if anybody doesn't know what a bay window bus is, it's a non-split screen. Bay window buses were made from 1975 all the way up to 2013 in the Brazilian market.
You are an air-cooled nerd, but I learned something new too.
I am an air-cooled nerd. They call me custom car nerd, but I have way too much information in my brain about all sorts of cars. I love learning new stuff and passing on information.
And if you're thinking about getting into the automotive trade, the Get Out and Drive podcast wants to encourage you to check out McPherson College. They offer programs for hands-on automotive skills, communications, and management within the automotive industry. So if being hands-on in the industry isn't for you, but you still love cars, go to mcpherson.edu to learn more.
And that's Trade Schooled for this episode. Like I always say, best way to gain knowledge and information is to learn with your mouth shut. Matt, do you plan on using the magazine as a advertising revenue generating source like every other tangible magazine has been since paper was invented?
We do. One of the things that that we talked about early on was, how are we going to fund this? We're a small team at the moment, but we do see ourselves growing. There is obviously going to be like any company, you're going to have overhead, you're going to have to keep the lights on. So, we talked about subscriptions and said, subscriptions just aren't going to pay the bills and do it right. So we are looking, and I'm actually been reaching out to a lot of different folks, a lot of different companies to potentially advertise with us. But we're still growing, so we don't have a huge following yet at this point. That's one of the reasons that, we're happy to be here so that we can get our message out. And hopefully there's somebody out there listening who likes what they see and would be interested in advertising in our magazine, because that's really where, we think that that's what the model is going to be. To a limited extent, though. Yeah, every other magazine's got tons and tons of ads in it. We don't want our magazine to be just filled with ads. I mean, that was one of the early discussions we had. Was that's sometimes it's very frustrating when you grab any type of magazine, whatever it might be. Half of it's ads, and we want to be selective with what we advertise. We want to make sure that the advertisers are targeting the market we're trying to reach.
That's good. And Robert Peterson can certainly tell you that it is a cash machine.
Yeah, true. I would like to own that museum. One of the things too we talked about is obviously if we're going to keep the magazine digital, we're not going to have printing and mailing costs, right? Which is one of the biggest detriments to magazines nowadays. Printing costs a lot more. Mailing costs a lot more than it did years ago. But there's an interesting formula that actually I discussed with Bob Peterson about 35, 40 years ago. And what he told me was something very interesting. He said, Bob, I want to tell you something. He said, the subscription pays to get the magazine to the reader. The production of the magazine, the printing of the magazine, the salaries of the magazine are all paid by advertising.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what people have forgotten in the internet. They want the same formula, and it's not the same. You can't charge somebody for printing and mailing a magazine if you're on the internet and you're not printing and mailing it.
Right.
And so we have to say to ourselves, if we're going to have any sort of subscription, it's going to be something like Behind the Velvet Rope. Maybe we'll offer something special to those people for a small fee. Like I can't imagine we have some ideas, but we don't want to talk about it now. But the idea being, if you wanted to be part of the team, or part of the inner circle, pay us small X dollars, and you'll get something special for that.
I think we're going to model that and call it Patreon. Go ahead and write that down.
Okay. But you know what I'm trying to say? I mean, you cannot go to people on the internet. And I think this is what magazines and newspapers have a problem with, and say, give me $5 a week and I'm going to send you my newspaper or my magazine in the internet. And people say, wait a minute, you're not paying for my internet connection. You're not paying for my computer. Wait a minute.
Right.
What? So that's why we want to go to selective advertisers, and we want to show them the value prop. And we want to tell them, look, we're going to put you in front of these people. We're going to go the old-fashioned model in many ways. We're not going to talk about a subscription. We're not going to talk about, you got to pay to see it. We're going to stay away from that. And that's our plan.
Just kind of running through the kind of the homepage and seeing the list of the archives. I'm just kind of trying to do this as I'm talking to you. One thing I don't see, maybe there's a reason for it or not, is I don't see an editorial. Was there ever talk of editorials for this type of program or this type of magazine?
Yes.
And if so, can you kind of talk us through a little bit of that? One of the biggest things that I always loved about picking up car magazines was getting the raw opinion of those writers on certain things of a brand new car or a failure of a car, so to speak. Just kind of walk us through the editorial, and is there something in the pipeline? What's it going to look like?
Well, I can answer one part. There will be editorials.
Okay.
And maybe they won't, maybe there'll be rants. I don't know. but both Matt and I have some strong opinions about the audience, the whole hobby in general. We've fallen into this kind of rut in this hobby and I think it's overly negative about complaining about, the young people, and I only like muscle cars, and brass is my thing, and all this kind of stuff. And we want to talk about that because that's really wrong, because there's so much exciting about every car from, Mr. Benz all the way up to the present, and you just have to find it.
I really, really, really want to do this, and maybe I can do it with you guys. I don't know. I want to take like what people thought was a fast car in the pinnacle of horsepower in, like, let's say 1970, and you've got HO Trans Am, or you have the LS6, LS7 Chevelle, whatever. Take whatever you choose as the pinnacle of, that was the fastest street production car that I knew, and we'll race it against like a new Kia
Yeah.
And I believe that a new Kia can outperform what you thought was the fastest thing in the valley in 1970. And I think it can still start, stop, and steer what used to be the pinnacle of technology in 1970.
Yeah.
I totally agree.
Let's talk about that. Do you think that would be something that would happen?
I think it would be. I mean, obviously, you can't pick a stone. You can't pick a car that can't get out of its own way. But I agree with you. So, yeah, I love those muscle cars. I love them. But that's an error. And that's all it is. And at the time, yes. But we also know that it was a price issue. But if you bought a Ferrari, it was going to leave that LS6 in the dust. It was, it would out accelerate until it got to the corner, and that would have been the end of the story. We will talk about those things, but we don't want to rant about it.
We want to be informational, conversational, not, like you said, not rant about it. I've got a brand new 22 Ford Explorer with a 4-cylinder twin turbo. That thing flies like a bat out of hell. I look under the hood; it's got this little tiny thing in there. What's going on? The little hamster wheel in there. No, that's one of the reasons I bought it. I was impressed with the amount of power that this thing had for as big a vehicle as it is, and for such a small engine that's in there.
I mean, computer controls has let us do so much, which we're going to get to in our next issue. You'll be very excited about that. But
another hint. Okay, that's good.
Yeah. Hint.
Dropping hints here, Bob. All right.
Yeah, I'm not going any further. You got to whet the appetite, as the Italians say. I'm going to whet your beak. But to answer your question, Jason, we definitely want to talk about issues, but we want to do it in a way that inspires people to think about it. Because the worst thing you can do is get people's back up, because then, patooey.
It's something that John and I kind of always wanted to, we've talked about different topics, and one of us will take one side versus the other. And maybe not so much to rant, but to show to the world that, there really is two sides. Maybe there's three, maybe there's four, but there's different ways of looking at things that doesn't involve me sticking a knife in your back or backing you into a corner and telling you X, Y, and Z is better than ABC. Like, we've come to the situation in this world today where people take a stance and they're hardcore. Well, guess what? Let's take a step back and talk about, what were the good things about the Mustang 2? I know there's not a lot, but there's some good things there. Or the AMC Rebel.
My neighbor has one.
Right. Again, we just need to start bringing these stories, like you said, bringing these stories forward, not ranting, showing that there's a side that may make people go, right? There's something there that's going to make.
And also some of the history. Again, I go back to the history part of it, but some of the history of what led these manufacturers to make some of the decisions they made. Sometimes they look like they were just an arbitrary decision, but in most cases they weren't. Somebody deliberately sat down and looked at all the data and said, "Okay, we're going to do something really stupid, or we're going to do something really great." Which one is it? As to what was really going on, a certain decision was made. That information just helps fill in some of the blanks. And
the marketing issues, like we did in our magazine, we covered two issues: Packard and Hudson, and why did they fail. And we went into detail about why they failed. And we went into detail about the decisions they made that threw them under the bus. But we wanted to tell people that these were great brands with a great future in front of them. And they made some, it doesn't take much. They made some bad decisions. And before they knew it, they were history. And we want to tell those stories too, because people, why isn't the Packard around? It was a luxury vehicle. Why isn't it around? People ask that question. What happened to this car? Well, we want to try to tell that. And that has to do also with models and brands of cars. Why isn't XYZ a car anymore? Why doesn't Ford make anything but an SUV anymore? That's an open question that I want to talk about, because I'm a sedan guy. And so those are kinds of things that we want to talk about, not, as Jason said, not in a negative way, right? It doesn't have to be negative. But you can explore it, and you can, as you said, editorialize about it. Yeah. You can say, here's the thought process that we see, and here's the thought process perhaps that they see. And that doesn't have to be the manufacturer, it could be people as well. And let's bring that together and try to understand it, because nothing is as simple as people make it. And your point about people being so, they got to do this now instead of doing this. And it's ridiculous. I mean, how do you get an idea across to somebody else who's going to yell at them? Not going to get anywhere with that.
No.
Now nobody's going to talk to anybody.
No, I mean, I think the other thing I think we haven't focused enough on, and this is going to be difficult for us, is the newer vehicles. I mean, when I say newer, I mean the stuff that people are driving now. Let's
Right.
call it 21st century vehicles.
Mhm.
How do we write stories about them? Because you know what's really kind of terrible? There's not as much information out there on the newer vehicles as they were on the older vehicles. Here's a rant for you, Jason. The manufacturers have stopped making brochures.
Yeah.
They don't even make an internet brochure like they used to make. They market, Matt and I were talking about this. They market in the current year, and then any of the information that they created for this vehicle for this year,
Gone.
vapor.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a sin, and it's their own, and they're going to regret that because their history is going to disappear. That will be a rant. I mean, I don't know how. I'm not going to scream and yell about it, but we're going to talk about that because you go up to 2020 and you can get an internet. That's an actual magazine. A brochure you can print out, or you can actually get a printed one. Well, go to a dealer now and look and go there. There's no more brochures anymore. They
Right.
tell you to go to the website and download some folder.
Well, to be straightforward with you, Bob, you go to the dealerships, there's no cars either. So, I mean,
Yeah,
No, that's true too.
that's true.
Well, Bob, I've already named a section of your magazine, and whether or not I'm a part of it, it's be fine. You can take my idea. It's called The Old and News, NEWS.
That's a great idea.
I like it. I like it.
Mr. Marketing guy, make sure you write that down.
I've got it. I like it.
No, that's a
I
good
appreciate-
point because we just talked about new business cards that we're talking about, and one of the things we learned that people really got excited about is when we talk about the magazine, we say get in and
Mhm.
take a ride with us.
Yeah.
And we're going to push that because that it resonates.
Yeah, I mean, yours is get out and drive. Ours is get in, and that's just it. It's it's the car. It's get into the magazine, get in, and learn from us. We'll take you on a ride, and we don't know where we're going to go. We may get lost, but we're gonna have fun getting there.
He just described our podcast.
welcome.
Right. We start our
describes our
podcast.
editorial
Right.
content.
We start our podcast. It has a quick release steering wheel, and we whip it out the window.
Yeah.
Nice.
Guys, it's been great to have you on the podcast. And the whole idea to have you here was to promote your magazine. So, Matt, why don't you tell everybody who's listening right now where they can find your magazine?
Our website, it's actually posted right on our website, which is over-drive-magazine.com. You can go there. The link to the magazine is right on the front page. You read the article, it pops right up, opens up as a flip book, and it's all right there in front of you. We're also on social media. We're on LinkedIn. We are on Instagram, and we are on, I just started a Twitter page. I haven't put much out there yet, but we are on Twitter. I do plan on expanding that. But LinkedIn is really our primary avenue for social media at the moment. So you can find us at Overdrive on there.
That's pretty cool. And guys, we're going to have all that information down in the section below. So when you're done listening to this podcast, you go down there and make your way over to Overdrive Magazine.
Thanks, Bob. Thanks, Matt. I'm going to look in for and check into you guys later and check on your progress. And hopefully we'll have you back on and you can share some of your progress with us.
We'll be glad to do so.
We appreciate that, and we'll have you on our front page of our magazine on the landing page as well, so that everybody can share in the fun.
Awesome. Have a great night.
You too.
We appreciate it. Thanks, guys.
Thank you very much.
Jason, let's give away another t-shirt.
Okay, let's do this. Our partners at Racing Junk are giving away a Borowski engine. You know, that big, powerful LS that was on display at SEMA. The question is, how much is that engine worth?
Well, there's an easy way to find out. Just race over to racingjunk.com, go to the giveaways section, and you'll find the information there.
And once you know what that Borowski engine is worth, go over to getoutanddrive.com and scroll all the way down to the bottom of the homepage and give us your answer in our listener hotline.
And don't forget to enter to win the Borowski Racing engine on racingjunk.com. Jason, I'm tired of watching the reruns of the Car Guy and Six Fan show on YouTube. When will we get to see new lives on there?
Well, starting Thursday, January 19th, 2023 at 7 p.m. Central Time. We're going to be going every third Thursday throughout the whole year, 12 episodes. Make sure you're there.
What drives you?